Tsotsi. Chapter 1 continues. So we know now it was night time. They were drunk. Tsotsi had an idea. He said, we're going to take one on the train. Boston said, but why? Sometimes we pick one and he's got nothing. And Tsotsi said, I never make a mistake. And the aap, he kind of seconded that. He said, yes, Tsotsi, you don't make a mistake. So the shadows are long enough, and they are now ready now to go out to the trains Friday night, just as they planned. Butcher, Stone Cold Killer, moved with impatience in his seat. Why all the talk? He liked it. It's good, man. Yeah, man, it's good. He stood up. Let's go. But Tsotsi was still waiting for Boston, still watching him, and his exclusive eyes, his dry lips, his pink tongue, as he tried to moisten them. Boston found nothing else to say against the idea. Nothing that they would understand and maybe accept. So Boston was always the one that would try to get them off this criminal path. Now, but he was always overridden. Okay, he said. Okay. So they all stood up and waited while Tsotsi put on his coat and then followed him out of the room and into the street. The aap second, then Boston, who was saying, okay, saying it many times between sighs and forced yawns and exaggerated indifference, with Butcher leaving last, because he had fetched a bicycle spoke from a box in the corner of the room. That was the reason for his name. He had never missed. Now, at the time, the most effective weapon to kill someone was a bicycle spoke. Now, the reason for a bicycle spoke was because it was so thin. Now, I don't know, maybe that guy's had some medical background. And if you poke it at just the right place, it stuck right up into the heart, causing no bleeding, no real visible puncture wound, but it kills you instantly because it penetrates the heart. So that was the weapon of choice in those days for gangsters. Now, due to the fact that it was quick, silent, easy, and it caused the least bleeding. Right. So, for the untrained eye, someone who was stabbed with a bicycle spoke looked like the person just fell down because of a heart attack. Okay. Now, in the book, you will see there's wide open spaces. Now, listen carefully. That wide open spaces doesn't mean it's now the end of a paragraph in the beginning of a new one. No. That is a literal or a literature technique we call typographical white. And typographical white means time goes on. So now the story jumps from where the guys have left Tsotsi's shack to they get to the train station, until they get to the train station there, where they are about to do their work. The street they took was crooked and buckled, as bad as the corrugated iron fences they passed on the side, and Tsotsi led them a way that was sharp with stones and eyes and dog's teeth. It was dusty at the end of the day, but still light when they left the room. It had been hot as well, it being that time of year, and the township was heavy with movement of them moving, with hope for the dark clouds in the east and thoughts about a wet world. So it was hot, and the clouds were packing, and everybody was were hoping for rain. It's weekend, the township is busy. It was a moment of respite, a slow moment between the long day and the township. A moment between the long day and the lot done and the lot more to come with a longer night. And the township wore that hour the way a beggar wears his rags, the cast-offs of a better time, accepted but without gratitude, worn but without pride. Children were despondent because there were no more games to play. Busy women found themselves with empty hands. Dogs stood around on awkward legs. Old men dozing in the sun felt the sun go and awoke to find their bodies cold. It was an hour of despondent attitudes. When you kicked the dust, if you had played in it all day, or stood up and spat into it, if you had slept there in the sun. And having kicked you, just stood, or having stood just waited, like the women with their idle hands, and tried not to see yourself in the other postures of uselessness. So it was just another day, and it felt like you just woke up, and you just did nothing, and the sun just set. And you're gonna do the same tomorrow. Worn your burden like a worn-out rag. Idle hands, nothing to give, nothing to take. But the moment of their passing, the four of them walking down the street with a purpose, was also the passing of that moment of respite. And more than respite, a moment of reckoning. It had also been when neighbour missed neighbour because the slum clearance men had been at work in that area, and a few more roofs were down, and the walls, without doors and windows, gaped like skulls in the fading light, and you could still see the dust settling inside while you remembered the disbelief, the angry impotence, the confusion, the faces that had followed the cart loaded high with the sticks of furniture. It's how people got arrested and forced to move and live in other places, and house that was empty and ragged and raided and looted. Now, remember, it was those times where it was dehumanizing, and that was apparent in the townships, house by house by house. A reckoning also for the old man who was prompted by the cold in his bones to count the days past and hope for tomorrow. A reckoning for the women who balanced the little money their men would bring home against their many needs, spending at the same time a mere portion of hope on their safe return, because this day had been Friday, and ahead was the night, and the four men passing that moment were harboring of the night. That moment gone now, because they had passed, and rooms were suddenly grey and cold. Mothers calling their children off the streets, where shadows were running like rats after the four pipers. And Tsotsi knew it, knowing not only as a fact, as big as the brave men who stepped aside to let him pass, and the shopkeeper who hurried out to board up his windows and bolt his doors, or as small as fatherless children, and the whispers of hate that scuttled away down the alleys. He knew it also has meaning. Life had taught him no other. So here we can see Totsi's or Tsotsi's traumatized and troublesome past. And the environment at the time that he grew up, it was grim, it was bitter, it was hateful, it was almost dehumanizing. But he learned to survive in that, no? Because life had told him that from a very young age. Trauma. All right. And that's the only thing he knew. So on his way to the train station, he observed all these. Bitter, the hate, the suffering. But he survived because in his mind he could cope with it. Because that's all he knew. No. His knowledge was without any edge of enjoyment. It was simply the way it should be. So people were forced these days, during apartheid's era, to just accept this is the way we have to live. This is the way we have to cope with. So it's simply the way it is. There's no enjoyment. We have to survive. We have to live with it. Feeling in this way, other men feel when they see the sun in the morning. The big men, the brave ones, stood down because of him. The fear was of him. The hate was for him. It was all there because of him. He knew he was there at that moment, leading the others to take one on the trains. That is why, in his passing down the crooked street, men looked the other way, and women wept into the dust. So the mere fear of Tsotsi's appearance made him feel strong and brutal, because whenever anyone sees him, they would hide away. No? That's what they did. Now stay tuned for the train scene.